The Painter of the Wind. In the coastal village of Positano, where lemon trees hung over blue cliffs and the air shimmered with sea salt, there lived a woman named Alessia Marino. She was a restorer of old paintings, someone who brought faded colors back to life with patience and light. Her studio overlooked the sea. Every morning, she would open the tall windows and let the wind carry in the scent of the Amalfi Coast. Rosemary, citrus and sun-warmed stone, but her own heart for many years had been quiet. Alessia once loved a musician, a cellist named Marco, who drowned in a storm while returning from Naples. Since that day, she'd worn no colors, only white and gray, as if afraid any brightness might betray him. But fate has a way of painting love back into the dullest lives. One late afternoon, while restoring a 17th century portrait for the village church, Alessia noticed a man standing outside her window. He was sketching her studio, every detail, with a charcoal pencil. When he realized she was watching, he smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, Signorina. I didn't mean to intrude. The light here, it's perfect." His name was Ethan Walker, an English travel writer who painted in his spare time. He had come to Positano to finish a book about forgotten artists of the Mediterranean. But when he saw Alessia surrounded by brushes and sunlight, he forgot about his book entirely. She offered him coffee. He stayed for hours. They talked about art, about time, about the strange way grief can make people careful with beauty. Before leaving, Ethan said, "Your work, it doesn't just restore paintings, it restores peace." And Alessia, for the first time in years, smiled. Over the next weeks, Ethan became a familiar presence, sketching by the sea, bringing her lemons, reading his drafts aloud while she worked. Sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, he'd paint her reflection on the studio glass. One evening, a storm rolled in from the west. The waves rose high and wild, and thunder crashed over the cliffs. Alessia ran outside to bring in her drying canvases, and found Ethan standing in the rain, holding one of them to keep it from blowing away. "You'll ruin your clothes!" she shouted. He laughed, soaked to the skin. "I'd rather ruin that than your painting." When she took the canvas from him, their hands touched. And for the first time in years, she felt warmth that wasn't just from the sun, but love like the sea tests before it blesses. Ethan received news from London. His father had fallen ill. He had to return immediately. He promised he'd come back when the autumn winds softened. The night before he left, Alessia brought him to the old cliffs above the village. She showed him the exact place where the wind was strongest. The place she called La Voce del Mare, the voice of the sea. "When you miss Positano," she said, "stand somewhere the wind is strong. If you listen, maybe you'll hear me too." He touched her cheek. "Then I'll never stop listening." Months passed. The autumn came and went. No letters arrived. Alessia tried to convince herself that love was a thing meant only for other people. She threw herself into work, restoring an old fresco in the cathedral. Then one morning, the postman brought a package, no return address. Inside was a small canvas wrapped in linen. It was a painting of her, standing on the cliffs, hair blown by the wind. On the back, in Ethan's handwriting, it said, "For the woman who taught me that silence can be a kind of song." Tears blurred her vision as she pressed the painting to her heart. A year later, during the annual Festival of Lanterns, the villagers filled the night sky with floating lights that drifted over the sea. Alessia stood on the same cliff watching. She whispered to the wind, "If you can hear me, bring him back." A soft gust lifted her hair, and from the edge of the crowd she heard a voice say, "I heard you the whole time." She turned. Ethan stood there, older, tanner, a camera slung across his chest and the same gentle smile on his face. "I finished the book," he said, "but I realized I couldn't write about lost art anymore, not when I'd found the most beautiful thing worth keeping." She laughed through her tears. "And what is that?" "You," he said simply. Years later, tourists who visited Positano would stop by a white-walled gallery near the sea called The Painter of the Wind. Inside, they would see paintings of cliffs, lanterns, and two people standing together on the edge of the world, always surrounded by light. And sometimes, when the afternoon breeze swept through the open doors, the scent of lemons and salt carried a whisper, the sound of a woman's laughter, and the echo of a promise kept.